Hello. I'm now going to acquaint you with the mechanics of the Business Impact Analysis form. We assume that you have identified who in your organization will participate in the Business Impact Analysis process. If you haven't done so already, consult with your advisor about your organization to determine who and what departments should participate. During Ready Plan development, you will need to determine what functions are most critical at your organization and will need to be recovered during a business interruption. Your Ready Plan will be focused primarily on recovery of those critical functions. This process of identifying critical functions and the resources needed to resume them is what we refer to as the Business Impact Analysis, commonly referred to as the BIA. Let's go to your document library and open up the Business Impact Analysis form. I have already pre-populated a BIA form for demonstration purposes. As you can see, this form is an Excel spreadsheet. You should have a good working knowledge of Microsoft Excel to use this tool. The BIA form has two tabs. The first tab captures critical functions and the resources required to recover them. The second tab captures how you will phase in staff and other resources over the course of the recovery period. On the first tab of the form BIA, you will notice that as I scroll over the column headings, that a comment box appears. Here, a description of the information required is explained. I will now walk you through completing the first tab of the form. In the first column, you need to identify your organization's critical functions. A critical function is defined as a business activity that, if not resumed within a stated period of time, could result in losses to assets, revenue and market share, damage to reputation, adverse impact to customers, and failure to comply with regulations. For our hypothetical accounting department example, we have identified accounts payable as a critical function. A recovery time objective, commonly referred to as the RTO, is defined as that length of time in which the critical function needs to be resumed. The RTO is critical to the recovery strategies you will develop later. The RTO allows you to prioritize the recovery of critical functions. This ensures that the priority of your recovery procedures in your Ready Plan is appropriate to recover the critical functions of the organization. The RTO intervals can be modified. See the intervals below the working area of the sheet. Changing the intervals in this section of the worksheet will adjust the drop-down menu in the RTO column of the spreadsheet. Whatever RTO intervals you choose, it is imperative that they will be consistent for each BIA form completed. Using different sets of RTO intervals will make the analysis of the data difficult to perform later. For example, the RTO for the accounts payable function has been identified as 1 week. Next, you will indicate the legal and regulatory impact that may be experienced if the identified critical function is not resumed within the defined RTO. We have established high, medium, or low impacts for this measurement. In this example, we have selected a low impact if the critical function is not resumed within its RTO period. Your organization may not be subject to legal or regulatory requirements for business continuity. If this is the case, you may decide to change the title of this column to something more relevant to your organization or industry that will help you to measure the impact of not resuming the critical function within the defined RTO. Consult with your advisor as how best to use this information in your analysis. The staff column should indicate the number of staff that are required to perform the critical function. For our example, the accounting department would need 2 staff people to perform this critical function. The Applications and Technology Requirements column should reflect any application systems or technology platforms required to resume and process critical functions. For our example, it has been determined that the General Ledger application, access to the Internet for banking purposes, and email would be needed to perform the critical function. Be consistent with naming conventions of applications and systems. Avoid referring to the same application or system by more than one title. Doing so will make the analysis of the data difficult to perform. Special equipment requirements refer to equipment other than the normal office and workstation items like computers, phones, and fax machines. Examples of special equipment might be a high-volume printer, equipment needed for manufacturing a product, a postage meter, and so forth. For our example, the accounting department needs a check printer that uses special ink to produce checks. Vital records refer to hard copy and electronic documents needed to perform a critical function. In our example, the accounting department would need copies of invoices recovered to perform this critical function. Telecommunications refers to methods of communication such as telephones, cell phones, fax machines, email, etc. In our example, the department has indicated that they would require a fax machine and telephones to resume this critical function. Internal dependencies represent other departments within your organization that are part of the process flow that surround the identified critical function. You may depend on a department to perform a process first before you can perform the identified critical function. Alternatively, another department in the process flow may depend upon you performing a critical function before they can perform one of their critical functions. This is an important analysis to determine that interrelated functions in a process flow across the organization are in sync with regard to recovery time objectives. For this example, we have identified the treasury function of the organization and any department that approves an invoice prior to payment. External dependencies are entities outside of your organization that you depend upon to perform the identified critical function. An example of this could be outside vendors, contractors, processing centers, etc. These vendors may provide processing support and be a critical recovery resource to resume the critical function. You want to ensure that external entities are part of your recovery process. External dependencies may also be those that rely on you to perform the critical function. These could be customers or regulators. For our example, we have identified our bank through which we process payments and vendors that issue invoices as external dependents. Depending on the size of the organization, you may need to complete multiple BIA forms and aggregate the data later for analysis. For example, if your business site has several departments, you may want to prepare a BIA form for each department. If you do complete multiple forms, you will need to aggregate the data into one spreadsheet so that you can prioritize all the critical functions by Rto interval. The second tab of the BIA form is the Recovery Resource Phase-In. This form will provide you with a snapshot of how you propose to phase in resources over the recovery period. Phase-in of recovery resources should be consistent with RTOs identified on the first tab of the form. I will walk you through how to populate the form. The phase-in intervals can be modified, but should be applied consistently in every BIA form. The accounting department has a total staff size of 5 people that includes management. During the first 4 hours after a disaster has been declared, 1 staff person is expected to be working from home. Within 24 hours, 2 staff will be working from home. This includes the 1 person that was working at 4 hours. These numbers are cumulative across the sheet. Within 3 days, 2 people are working from home and 3 people need to be working at an alternate site. Office and workstation equipment will need to be procured to support staff. At the 1-week interval, all 5 staff are expected to be working at the alternate site and fully equipped. Again, if you collect this information from multiple departments at one location, it will be necessary to consolidate the data by merging all of the forms into one sheet. Once you have collected the data in the BIA form, check in with your advisor for guidance on how to analyze the data and determine what it is telling you. You should also consider reporting the results of the BIA process to senior management of your organization and obtain approval for the priority of critical functions. Once the BIA data has been analyzed, the next step is to move to designing viable recovery strategies that will ensure that you can meet RTOs for recovery of critical functions. Your advisor will help you to properly analyze your BIA data and formulate recovery strategies. During the course of the BIA process, you may identify recovery gaps. These gaps will need to be addressed during Ready Plan development. Don't forget to track these issues in the Outstanding Issues table on your To-Do page. Now you are ready to conduct your business impact analysis. Thanks, and bye for now.